Welcome to the Growing in Grace podcast, where you can listen in on some casual conversation about the good news of Jesus without all of the inconsistent religious double talk. If you've ever struggled with feelings of hopelessness, guilt, and despair, or wondered if you're really right with God, it's time to discover the true freedom that comes with the gospel of unlimited and overflowing grace.
Hi, Mike Kapler with you, along with Joel Brueseke. Program number 800 Growing in Grace podcast. Over all these years, Joel, did you ever think this was going to happen?
Yeah, this would never have been on my radar at all, or on my Hawkeye or anything. Oh, sorry.
Oh, a MASH joke. I like it.
Right. That's right. That's one of these things on this podcast. You'll hear references to, well, MASH, Gilligan's Island, Andy Griffith, the Beverly Hillbillies.
The Hillbillies, the Flintstones.
The Flintstones.
Hey, we were watching a recorded version from a week or two ago of, what's it called? Name That Tune.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, one of the tunes that you were supposed to name was the Flintstones theme song.
Oh. The Flintstones theme song.
Yeah, they slip one of those in on you once in a while.
So that goes back quite a few years. Name That Tune.
Yeah, this is a new version.
Oh, new version. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
And the Flintstones were on it, huh?
Yeah, they've done it every once in a while. They'd slip in like a television theme or something like that, but just to throw you off, keep you honest, I guess. They did another one that didn't even have any words in it. It was the theme to the X-Files TV show.
Oh.
Sadly, I knew that one too after only a few notes.
Name That Tune. I used to like to watch that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. I mean, 800. I mean, it's the funny thing about this, or I don't know, funny, weird, strange, whatever, I don't know, is that while 800 is a big number. I mean, to me, going back to the year 2005 when we started doing this, I never would have fathomed 16 years or 800 podcasts. I mean, that wouldn't have been in my I couldn't have imagined that. And now that we've done it on the one hand, yeah, that's a big number. On the other hand, we just keep doing it. And I don't mean like a routine. I just mean that it's what we do. It just seems like it's what we do, and so it doesn't seem like, when we reached 100, 700 podcasts ago, I thought, wow, that was huge. Now that we're at 800, I mean, it's big and it's remarkable to me, because I couldn't have fathomed it. But at the same time, it's like, yep, this is what we do, and it's great, and we love doing it, and it's worth celebrating, and at the same time, it's like, it's more that I love doing this rather than thinking it's some huge accomplishment. I don't know. Am I making any sense or not? I might not be.
Yeah, you lost me. I'm just kidding. After we got off Name That Tune and you started talking about the program, you lost me.
Well, here, all right, let me start talking about Gilligan's Island again. Get you back on track. The Addams Family.
So I'm with you. I mean, this is like, think of some of the routines in your life, whether they're daily or weekly or whatever. I mean, this is just like, taking a shower for us, or if you drink coffee, or, not that
I can't
we
believe
take a
you
weekly
mentioned coffee.
I don't want to say we take a weekly shower like the Three Stooges or something. It's Saturday night, but, brushing your teeth. I mean, it's like it's a habit for us. It's a part of our routine. It's a part of what we do. It's just, you don't even think about it. You just do it.
Right.
And this has been, beyond my expectations. I don't think we had any expectations going into this. We just took it one step at a time, and I guess that's kind of what we still do. It's just, when it's time to record, we record. We don't spend a ton of time talking about what we're going to record, and it just penetrates into the hearts and lives of people all around the world. We've heard from you, and we thank you for that.
Yeah, and someone might be thinking, well, 16 years, and well, if there's 52 weeks in a year, shouldn't there be more than 800 podcasts? Well, that first year or two we weren't necessarily, we did mostly weekly podcasts, but there were some months when we only had one or two in a given month. So that first year or two, and I had kind of forgotten about that, but I kind of went back and looked, and I realized, oh, okay, so there were some months when we didn't have 4 or 5 podcasts in a given month. So that's how we've only at 800 after over 16 years. But it's still, so one thing that we've done in going back and looking at some of the things that we've talked about, one of the things, or what we wanted to do as we celebrate this 800 podcast that we've done, is to kind of revisit briefly, at least, some of the topics, some of the highlights, some of the things that we've talked about over the last 16 years and 800 podcasts, some of the things that we really enjoy talking about and that we feel are our highlights of the Growing in Grace podcast. And so that's what we're going to kind of do here, whether it's one podcast or a few, who knows, knowing us, we get to talking, and this might be a few podcasts, I don't know, but anything that trips your mind, Cap, as we start talking about some of these things that we feel are important things to share?
Yeah, so the things that we've talked about over the past 16 years, what do I think are perhaps considered to be some of the most impactful from my perspective and from your perspective? It's kind of a long list, but we can shrink it down to some of the core things that the podcast has been about. I think one of those, and we'll try to maybe hit on some of these kind of quickly, others we might spend a little more time on, but I think one of those things, Joel, that when I think back more than 25 years ago, when I first came into when I first broke away from a lot of religious ideology and came into the gospel of grace, one of the things that impacted me early on was the fact that righteousness, which basically just means that the state of being acceptable to God or being right with God in a sense, it projects an element of complete holiness. And I thought this was something we had to work toward. I thought being right with God was something I had to maintain based upon, doing Christian stuff, doing religious things, avoiding bad things, trying to live the life to the best of my ability. But when I found out that righteousness, that I was already completely declared and identified as righteous by God through what Jesus did on my behalf. It's not now any longer what I'm trying to become, but I am the righteousness of God. And that's not meant to be a boastful thing, an arrogant thing to say. It's very humbling, actually, because we as Christians, we as believers in Christ, are identified as the righteousness of God. He doesn't just see us as righteous. We really are righteous within our hearts because we're in Him. And that was a big thing. And I remember, a Grace teacher that you and I are both familiar with back in the 1990s, who made the statement that Romans 1:16 and 17 was really a cornerstone passage when it came to the gospel of Christ, the gospel of grace. He said this is so critical to understand that, when Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, it's the power of God unto salvation for both the Jew and the Greek. For in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed. So this revealing of God's righteousness was a big thing for me to realize I couldn't do anything to make myself more acceptable to God.
Right, yeah, it's the gift of God. That's why, you're saying it's nothing that we're bragging about, nothing that, it's something that we say humbly as believers. And it's something that I feel is important to communicate too, because I think a lot of people in the church today don't see themselves as righteous. They don't understand that they are holy, that they've been sanctified, that they've been made pure, that they've been cleansed from all sin, and it's the gift of God. A person maybe surveys their life and they see, well, I've done this, or I've messed up here, or I keep doing this thing, or it's always focused on my works, my performance, I'm not good enough in my performance, and that's the focus for many people. And so they think, how can I possibly say that I'm righteous? How can I possibly say that I am the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus? Well, it's the gift of God. He who knew no sin, that's Jesus. He never knew sin, yet he became sin for us. And we who never did a good thing in our lives, who did, no, there is no one good, no, not one. There is nobody. There's no one righteous. And yet, he made us the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. So before Christ, it could have been said, yeah, there's no one good, no, not one. But now in Christ, we've been made his righteousness. And it's the gift of God. That's why we can say it boldly and humbly, because we know that it's not our own doing. We know that it's all of him. It's everything. It's what he did. And that leads me to one of the things that I've loved that we've talked about from time to time is this idea.
Can I just add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you go on. Sorry, but this righteousness thing, and we've said this for years on the podcast, but if you go into your typical church out there, church building, and ask for a show of hands, how many people here believe that they are righteous? Watch how few hands go up. And you might have somebody refer to that verse that you just mentioned. There is none righteous, no, not one. But that was before the cross. That was an Old Testament passage. In Christ, that has changed, and that was Paul's point. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and that's definitely a great point to bring up, that it was before the cross, nobody was considered righteous. Even righteous acts, even the most righteous of righteous acts were considered as filthy rags before God. But in Christ, this great exchange happened, and that's what I was leading to here. We've talked in the past, we've done podcasts about, this gospel is not a gospel of change. We might change. There are some changes that happen to us, but rather it's a gospel of exchange. Our sin was exchanged for God's righteousness. Our life, we died with him and we were raised together with him, so our life was exchanged for his life. He gave us his life. He gave us his righteousness. So it's a gospel of exchange. And I think that helps people when they understand that it's not about my performance, it's not about me trying to change. Yes, is there a legitimate change that happens to a person who comes to know Jesus? Yeah, there's legitimate change that happens, but that's not the gospel. The gospel is a matter of God taking our life, and in Galatians 2:20 says we died. We died with him, and then we rose together with him into new life. It's a brand new life that we have in Christ. It's not our own life. It's the life of Christ that's in us. And so it's an exchange. It's not me trying to change. When I finally understood that, I was able to rest. I was able to relax and enjoy my life with Christ, knowing that my works are never going to be good enough in and of myself. I'm never going to be able to accomplish all this stuff by myself. And so I'm going to rest, relax, and trust in the fact that he has given me his righteousness. This one went really quickly, Cap. And so, like I said, we might spend a few podcasts on this, celebrating 800 podcasts, and going on to 801 next week. We'll talk more about some of the things that we feel have been impactful that we've talked about here on the Growing in Grace podcast.
This has been Growing in Grace with Mike Kapler and Joel Brueseke, heard online through various internet sources around the world each week. Access past programs by visiting growingingrace.org. Share it with a friend and listen again next week for more Growing in Grace.